Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to episode 7 of Two Christians Walk Into a Bar. Today, two of my favorite Christians here, my good friend and mentor, Linus Morris Jr., and his friend, Jim McAndrew, who's representing a very, to me, exciting organization called Magnalia, which I want him to talk more about. I just want to say that God is good and life is good and Jesus loves you. And why don't we start with you, Linus? Welcome back. Linus is not only a good friend of mine, also a mentor in the Christian in faith, and he's a leader in Adventures of the Heart, which is amazing excursions that seek to for men to recapture their masculine heart. But Linus, let's go with you first. Welcome. Good to see you, brother.
Isn't this three Christians walking to a bar?
It is. Today it is.
Good to see you. Great to be on Honors, and excited to be here.
And maybe you can introduce like Jim before we put some words on as well, because Jim and I, like you say, had an influence in like you finding Bitcoin.
Oh yeah, well, it's fun seeing both you guys, because you are the two most instrumental people that basically orange pilled me and got me on board. And it's when I talked to you, Jim, out in Texas, although we know our family's from Maui. But I was out there, and your passion and conviction is what I think moved me the most. And I always laughed with my wife. I'm like, I know I'm never the smartest guy in the room, but I can kind of tell who is. I'm like, this guy's brilliant, and has conviction and passion. So that really caught my attention. There was something about your conviction and passion that moved me. So that got the wheels turning for me, and I really started thinking. And then Anders happened to meet you at my dad's house in the Pacific Palisades randomly. And then I'm like, this is the same thing Jim has. It's like the same level of conviction and passion. And I mean, you rarely meet people that are really passionate and have a deep sense of conviction. So I'm like, so that got me really going. I think that's when I started dipping my toes in. Then I went back to Texas and saw Jim again. And then I'm like, I'm all in. That's it. So it was, and then I just dove in head first and haven't looked back. I think that was maybe 2 years ago or so. And really changed the course, I think, of my family. So.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Jim, why don't you, thank you for being here. Welcome to your show for the first time. I have a feeling that I'd love to have you back many more times. I mean, first of all, just Linus, check out the setup here. Look how crisp, clear his camera is compared to ours. Look at the lighting, look at the microphone, the audio, everything is gold. Yeah. Right? Jim is in the middle here. You are the pillar of the show.
And we're like the ugly step cousins or something.
He's like holding up Jim here. And he can carry the show. No, but the reason why I'm very excited to have you, Jim, is because what you stand for in the organization that you have together with Tim, Magnalia, and Orange Pilling, teaching churches about Bitcoin and the advantage of maybe including that in the treasury and also helping them go about that. And that is what this Sunday show is for me. It's about bringing Bitcoin to Christians so they can unlearn some of the propaganda from the which is very unconstructive, and actually see it's much more aligned with God and Scripture than the dollar itself. Jim, please tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Anders. My name is Jim McAndrew, and my title actually at Magnalia is tech support. So if you guys need some tech support with your setups, I'm happy to help. But yeah, it's a nonprofit, and the whole purpose is to just help the church deal with Bitcoin. Like, how do we receive it? How do we hold it? How do we think about it? I got pretty convicted. This is like a year and a half ago. I'm a pretty avid skier, actually. We live in a mountain town, and I skied off a cliff, and I was actually filming it too. I got the footage to prove it. I skied off a cliff, and Linus, I think this is like right before I came out to Texas and we talked, but I walked away from it, and I shouldn't have walked away. So it was one of these kind of moments where I'm asking myself, okay, God obviously really wants me still here for some reason. Why? And this was right around the same time that, so we had our good friends, the Foxes. So Tim Fox, who's my partner at Magnalia, who Anders mentioned, he was our pastor actually. So we used to live in Austin for like 16 years. He was our pastor at our church. We became very close friends because his kids' ages were all of the same ages as our kids. And we just kind of did life together back there. And we would have them out from time to time. He was out, and I kind of floated this idea by him. It seems like there is a huge gap in the Bitcoin space. There's a couple of organizations that we love, like Thank God for Bitcoin and Brilliance Labs, Jordan and Oshawa, that are kind of doing different aspects of it. But there was kind of a gap in the orange pilling the church part of that space, particularly from a nonprofit perspective. So the idea was, I'm a like ordained deacon in the PCA. It's the Presbyterian Church of America. It's kind of one of the biggest conservative reform denominations in the country. Tim is a teaching elder in the same denomination. And so he kind of brings the theological chops to the table. And I, as a deacon, I kind of bring the nuts and bolts, sympathy and service ground game to the table. And so we figure if our powers combined, we could kind of make a run at this thing. And so we started Magnalia, and we don't charge for our services. We're in it for the passion. And the goal at the end of the day is, we think that the more Christians that have access and ownership over Bitcoin in the future, the better. So I think part of that is orange pilling the church, and that's definitely the primary focus. But then there's kind of this growing secondary focus of Jesus pilling Bitcoiners. And, so one way or another, it's either we're coming to the Bitcoiners that already have Bitcoin and Jesus pilling them, or we're coming to the no coiners in the church that need to be orange pilled. And so it's kind of a two-pronged approach. There's probably a lot to unpack there, but I'll stop talking, let you guys ask any questions if you want.
Linus, I want to, because there was something that Jim said about Jesus pilling Christians. I noticed that you reacted on. I don't know if you want to.
That's hard to do. I'm always trying to do that.
Jesus pilling Bitcoiners.
Well, both. I mean, that's why we're here, right? I mean, we're bringing God's kingdom to people who don't know Him, and there's no greater gift than that. I mean, I've never heard the term Jesus pilling Bitcoiners. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of an interesting term, but I think what we found is that Bitcoiners are very open to the truth, right? That's kind of probably what drew them to Bitcoin in the first place, is something that's like a bedrock kind of immutable standard that they can turn to. And so I think we found it's just a pretty ripe mission field. And so I think long-term there needs to be really like in-house missionaries at Magnalia and Brilliance Labs, and maybe even Thank God for Bitcoin, where they're just, they just spend their whole time. I mean, I can tell you, we were in Vegas last week for the Bitcoin conference. I don't know how many conversations I got into within like the first 5 minutes, just walking around the expo floor, talking to Bitcoiners about Jesus. I mean, it was like guys would just open up and they'd be like, "Oh, yeah, I literally just started reading the Bible 3 weeks ago," and just amazing stories, right? So,
Anders, that's kind of your story. I mean, maybe you could share a second about, I love what you say is all these Bitcoiners you knew were like,
yeah,
it's something. You tell the story. It's so good.
Yeah, sure. So, some what I believe supernatural things happen in my life that opened my mind up. That was a bit more than 3 years ago. That opened my mind up to, wow, there is definitely more. Like, the spiritual world is there. It's real. I've seen it, and some supernatural things happening, which opened my mind to, okay, it's not just what I've seen so far, and then it was the amount of Bitcoiners that are Christian, the amount of Christians amongst my Bitcoin friends that opened my mind up, because I was looking at all, like, I consider in general Bitcoiners to be like pretty smart, rational, critical thinking, able to think outside of just the information they're fed, but like I think independently and draw their own conclusions on whatever truth they're presented with. And what not weirded me out, but what had me pondering was like, why are you all you guys are smart Bitcoiners? You're intelligent. Why do so many of you believe to Jesus, to God, etc.? And that opened my mind to, well, maybe I am wrong. I could be wrong here, maybe. And through conversation with one of my friends who's a Christian Bitcoiner, I came to the conclusion that everything I had experienced, the only sane explanation is that there's an overall architect of the spiritual world, aka our Father in heaven, who created everything, and then everything in the Bible made sense with my experience. Like it matched my experience of evil fighting good in the spiritual world that has an influence on our physical, like real day life. So it's the amount of Christians being smart within Bitcoin that opened my mind, and through conversation took me to Christ. And now I'm very happy to have I think these two pillars of truth in my life, which is Christ, God, and Bitcoin.
Well, Anders is proof right there. You got Jesus built.
Yeah,
I got Jesus built.
I love you say, oh, why do all these smart people believe in Jesus? Like, I just think it's the coolest thing. Yeah.
And I think Christianity is like the most rational faith out there. When you really dig into it. I mean, obviously, when people have like a superficial understanding of it, they think that you're just believing in fairy tales and hocus pocus. But when you really dig into it, I think, Linus, you were talking about on the last episode, the case for Christ. It's really totally rational.
And some people are just searchers of truth, and I've got some friends who are just so close to trusting Jesus, and they're getting closer because they're hungry for what's true. And if you keep going down that path, it will conclude to Jesus. I mean, it's just you're right.
I think it was more subtle too. Anders, you were talking about within the last 3 years. I think with COVID and the mask coming off, I think that before the enemy was a little bit more subtle about his, basically confusing people. And now it seems like it's very much the sides are, the lines are drawn, and it's very clear, like who's on whose sides, like you're on the Epstein list or you're not. So
yeah.
Very true.
Speaking of, that was mentioned last week. Not that we want to go down that route, but that was a lot of shocking news there. But I think very much so. Once you start, reading scripture and believing to Jesus, our Father, Holy Spirit, etc., looking at the world, actually, what's going on now, what has been going on, and the way evil is attacking humanity, the way evil therefore also is attacking Christianity, it becomes, it kind of, to me, when I look at what's going on in the world, confirms the enemy, aka Satan, is at play. It's the central bankers. They're not just greedy people. They're evil. They're really evil, and they cause millions of people's of deaths every year. That's of course is a bit of like an argumentation, but and you hear all the stories of pedophilia, and you got Epstein's Island. Like the global elite is satanic, in my opinion. And Bitcoin is the sword of God that is right now being driven into the heart of evil, which is the funding machine, aka the money printer. But Jim, I know you're
yeah. I mean, so it's interesting, right? Because Bitcoin in the past has been, at least in the minds of a lot of people in the church and no coiners, and especially older generations, like maybe boomers, they associate it with drug dealers or the Silk Road, or Bitcoin is kind of on the side of evil in their minds, right? But at this point, I think it's becoming increasingly obvious that the central bankers and the Klaus Schwabs of the world, and all these, everybody that's been perpetuating the narrative that Bitcoin is evil, it's very clear that they're evil. And so then you have to ask yourself, well, if they're the ones that are calling Bitcoin evil and they're the evil ones, then what is Bitcoin really, right?
Amen. Yeah. Exactly.
So I don't know. To me, it's pretty clear, but there's a lot of baggage, and a lot of people just it can take a long time, and I think that's where Bitcoiners get frustrated, and that's where I got frustrated. So, like in my own journey, I started stacking for myself, and I was content with that. But then when I got pretty convicted, I was like, well, if I'm stacking for myself, then shouldn't I help my church stack? And so I orange pilled my own church, but it was a long process. Like it probably took like a year and a half or 2 years to get through that. And, as a Bitcoiner, that can be really frustrating because you're like, the price is going to run away from you, Right. And so I guess my encouragement to any Bitcoiners out there that do get frustrated like that, we're still so early. I mean, it's like if they got in at 50,000 versus 100,000 versus even 500,000, if we're going to 1 million a coin, 10 million a coin, 100 million a coin, whatever it is, it's like we're still so insanely early. It's like it's not worth burning all of your bridges and all of your relationship capital with your session or your elders or your pastor or whoever it is. Like, it's just going to take time. I mean, right. Even myself, okay, like I'm like probably the most pathetic person when it comes to how long it took me to actually fully get orange pilled. Okay. Like I'm embarrassed to say it, but I first, looked at Bitcoin basically in 2011 and thought it was a total scam, completely wrote it off. And then I looked at it kind of again in 16, 17 during that cycle. And I did buy some, but it was not like I was there for the revolution. I was just there because it was, I make a quick buck, like a stock trade or something. And, I ended up selling most of it for like altcoins and doing the whole thing. Right. And I didn't actually get fully orange pilled / become a maxi until really like halfway through 2023. So like I went from 2010 to 2023. It was like a 13-year period. So, it's like if you go try to orange pill your pastor or something and it takes him 6 months, like, I mean, thanks for the compliment, Linus. You call me the smartest guy in the room, but apparently it took 13 years for the smartest guy in the room to finally figure it out. So I'm not that smart.
Well, there was only 2 of us in the room.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm kidding.
You're me and Satoshi, we go way back.
I'm curious, like what worked? Like, how did you orange pill your church? And like, what did you learn from that I could learn from? Like what worked well, what seemed to make some inroads? I'm just curious.
So our church is a pretty small church. We've got maybe 60 or 70 people any given Sunday showing up in the morning. And so in the PCA, they're called mission churches. We're not particularized yet. So all that means is just we don't have a group of elders yet. It's just the pastor, and he's almost kind of running it like a missionary. And the hope is that once the church gets a little bit bigger, you kind of particularize and get kind of probably what most other churches would call like a board of elders. We just call it a session. So it was actually a little bit easier in one sense because there was only one guy I had to convince, the pastor. And I'm pretty good friends with him. Robbie's great. He's actually been on our podcast. You should go watch that episode if you haven't seen it. He kind of talks about his own journey. But in that case, I really needed to orange pill him. Like he needed to kind of get on board with it and start stacking for himself. And so that was like the first piece. And then once he was over the hump on that, then the next piece was I wanted to start doing all of my tithe in Bitcoin. So, I'm going to tithe anyways, but for any Bitcoiner really who's been in it for longer than 5 seconds, it's way more tax efficient to tithe in Bitcoin because you're basically tithing your low cost basis Bitcoin, not paying any capital gains tax on it. And then if you were going to put tithe in anyway, so then you just top your stack up with your fiat. And so you just constantly increase your cost basis. And so it's like you're getting an additional 10, 15, 20%, whatever your cap gains rate is, you're getting like an additional boost on how much you can give essentially. And so with that kind of incentive, Robbie was like, okay, yeah, of course. Now for our church, so there's kind of a practical thing here. When you tithe in Bitcoin, if you want to get a tax write-off for it, you do in the United States. Obviously, I don't know if there's people watching this in other countries, but in the United States, you have to file a certain form with the IRS, and it requires you to get a certified appraisal for that gift. And so that can cost, like, I think I paid like $120 last year for that. So it really kind of only makes sense to tithe in like big chunks, like quarterly or yearly. And so because otherwise you have to be getting all these appraisals. And so it works for our church because they have a fairly large account built up. They're like, we're saving to buy a building and stuff like that. And so if there's like a church that is desperate to just turn the lights on for their operating capital, and they need their tithes to like just pay people and keep the lights on, it can be a little trickier to do that. But for our church, it was like, yeah, you can tithe once a year at the end of the year. That's totally fine. So that's how we do it. It's a little bit trickier at my dad's church. So he's trying to tithe in Bitcoin. He goes to a Southern Baptist church in Blanco with, Pierre.
Yeah, my in-laws.
Linus's father-in-law. That's how we met each other. Yeah. Their church it's bigger, and it already has like a board of elders and deacons, I think is what they call them there. And so we're kind of in the process of trying to get them to understand it and accept it. So it's just going to take a while. We just started with them probably 3 or 4 months ago. So.
But Jim, why do you think that Christians should save in Bitcoin instead of in dollars, which is their cost, their living expenses are in dollars, and same for the churches? I mean, my opinion, and we're on the same page here, but what words would you, for any Christians watching, still being influenced by the evil propaganda, essentially saying that it's drug dealer money and it's money laundry and all of this? Why should Christians and churches, same thing, I guess, use Bitcoin?
So it's a little tricky, right? Because I think a lot of people view Bitcoin still as like a speculative kind of gamble, kind of investment type asset. And typically Christians have been pretty anti-gambling. And so I think that you hit the nail on the head. I think we need to reclaim it as saving, not as investing.
Right.
We're not trying to like get rich quick by putting our money in Bitcoin. What we're trying to do is just keep the wealth that we have. We're trying to use just weights and just measures like the Bible tells us to do.
Right.
Now, having said that, it's still like I said before, we're still so early. And so another aspect to being early is the volatility. And so I think where people can get tripped up, even if they agree with you that it's saving, it's if you're putting your rent money in Bitcoin and Bitcoin goes down 30% this month, which it has been known to do. I mean, it did that literally 2 months ago or whatever it was in the Trump tariffs. That can put you in a pretty big pickle, right? So I think what we're saying is, as Christians, we're trying to kind of live a Dave Ramsey style lifestyle where we save up enough money for rainy days that, we've got a year or two, or, however much it is of our expenses kind of just in the bank, under the mattress, whatever you want to call it. And so if there's somebody out there that's just sort of struggling to get by, whether they're an individual or a church, I would heavily caution them of like putting all they have in their checking account or something in Bitcoin. Bitcoin's not really a checking account. Like, you need to have several months worth of just operating capital in your checking account to be able to pay expenses and have a rainy day fund and stuff like that. What you're working towards is living frugally and being prudent and saving up enough to where you do have like a long-term savings account that you don't have to touch for 4, 5, 6, 7 years. And once you get to that point, because you've been living like a low time preference, God honoring lifestyle, then yeah, that money you should definitely put into Bitcoin, because it's a just measure and a just weight. And that's what the Bible tells us to do. So the same thing with like churches. A lot of churches will, like the treasurer, the finance committee, or whatever it is, they'll just either hold their money in a savings account that's paying like 3%, or they'll buy some bonds that pay 4% or something like that. And they're just assuming that the government published inflation numbers are correct. And so they're just focused on like not losing money at all costs. They just want the account balance inflation adjusted to kind of just, they can't be seen as, they're like, what business does the church have speculating? We're not trying to like get rich as the church, right? And I think there's a lot of stuff to unpack there, but I think at some level, it's like burying your talent in the field.
Yep, I was just going to say that. Yep.
Yeah, the Lord expects more of us, okay? And so, and also, I mean, that's not even addressing the fact that CPI is a lie, right? So it's like, yeah, you're making 4.5% on your bonds, but real inflation is 10, 20, 30%. So you're actually just, slowly dying. So.
Yeah, I think really what we're talking about is stewardship.
Yeah.
I mean, God owns everything. And then we're like the parable of the talents in Matthew 25. It's like, well, what are we going to do with, how are we going to steward money? And it's a tool, could be used for good, could be used for evil, like we talked about earlier. So for me, like when saving, I switched from monthly last year to yearly, so I can. And then Jim, you gave me that link to that assessment thing you just talked about.
The appraiser.
Yeah, the appraisal. Thanks. Yeah. So we're going to do that at the end of the year, and so it's really stewarding what God's given us to the best that my wife Danny and I can do, so we can give more and really have more impact for the kingdom. Because that's really what I believe that resources are for, is to have maximum impact for the kingdom of God. So,
well, yeah, I totally agree, and that's where I would push back against kind of the hardcore hodler that's just like never gonna sell anything. Yeah, that's not the point. Like the point is, like, my hope for our church would be that the Bitcoin tithes turn into like a massive blessing to where they could actually be able to afford buying a building at some point, because there's no hope. Like, we live in a super expensive area in kind of a resort town in Park City, and real estate is sky high. And it's like at our size and our the congregation gives generously, but where real estate prices are versus how big we are, there's no hope. We'll never get a building. So.
Unless you're saving Bitcoin.
Exactly. But the point is you eventually do spend it on a building or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. For me, it kind of, so I want to donate Bitcoin to my church, Calvary Church, where Linus's father, Linus Morris, is a good friend of mine. There's this is where Jim and Magnalia will I think would be very helpful, because so far I've only spoken a little bit with some of the people on the elder board and the secretary, I think it's called, and their traditional policy is anything we receive that is not dollars, we sell it for dollars, so we have dollars, and it just really hurt me when I was there for the yearly, I don't know what it's called, the yearly meeting. Like, we go through the church finances and stuff, and we have $1 million which is solid, right? It's I presume that's a lot of money that a church has as its savings, and me knowing that that's being diluted with 7% a year or more when they print money, which government deficit is forcing the money printer, and we have a lot of deficit right now. We've have had it for years. it hurts me seeing that $1 million sitting there and just probably 10% a year is just being sucked out of that, away from the church and the things we're supposed to do good. And it's going to the people that run the money printer, and then it finances forever wars, because that makes the military industrial complex rich. So money finds its way under the table back to the politicians. Likely, I would say, the smoking gun is there. That's why we have forever wars. That's why we keep dropping bombs somewhere around the world. So that's why I really want my church to start accepting Bitcoin, and long-term potential switch more over to Bitcoin. But if I could donate Bitcoin and say, hey, just a little bit, and you can't touch it for 10 years, I know 10 years from now that would be very fruitful for the church. But
I think it's really hard. A lot of people in the church, especially kind of Gen X and Boomer age and above, have grown up kind of under this mindset of American exceptionalism, and America can do no wrong, and we bring justice to the world, and we fought the Nazis, and wars are good. And I mean, there is like kernels of truth to some of that. But, and this is what Robbie said in his kind of podcast when he was talking about his own journey, is almost the hardest thing for him to accept on the orange pilling wasn't that Bitcoin was so amazing. It was that he had been lied to for so long about the system and the dollar and just the whole thing. And sort of accepting that Bitcoin was what it was also forcing him to kind of accept that he had believed all these lies for so long. And that can be really challenging for people, because obviously you don't want people in your church to feel like you're judging them because it's like, oh, you keep a dollar account balance, and so therefore you're funding killing babies in Ukraine or something. It's like, I mean, it may kind of be true, right? But starting there may not be the most like winsome way to get them over to Team Bitcoin and Team Jesus and Team Sound Money and Team Not Killing Babies.
Right.
So.
Yes, nuance. You got to be nuanced and careful there.
Yeah. Is your church, is it sitting in like a savings account, or do they have bonds or anything, or?
I am not sure. I don't recall. I just know that we have $1 million, and it just hurts me to know that it's just being diluted away. Is to the effect of just losing $70,000 to $100,000 a year in purchasing power. But our church has gone through a bit of a journey the last half year. We got a new phenomenal pastor, Pastor Justin. I'm at Calvary Church, for those interested, originally in Pacific Palisades, but that's part of why we're in a journey, because we can't go to our own church anymore since January 7, where we had the fires in Palisades. So now we are borrowing in Bel Air. There's a Bel Air church, a chapel. I think I'm not sure which denomination is, doesn't matter, but we're up there. And we got this new pastor, and he's phenomenal. Great sermon also today. And we're going to he and I are going to sit down and have a lunch one day. Unfortunately, I'm traveling the next couple of months. I'm out of here for the summer, going to Denmark and BTC Prague, and maybe a little bit else around. But we're going to sit down and have that conversation, I think, and I'll argue for why I believe Bitcoin would be good for the church, and at least accept it and not turn it into dollars. I'm not saying buy Bitcoin if you don't want. I understand that's another step, but at least to start with learning about Bitcoin, because there's other Christians that say this is actually more aligned with Scripture. It's just weights, as you say. I love that, Jim. That it's true measurements and weights. It's not being diluted by someone else, because Bitcoin is hard capped at 21 million units, for those who don't know. And so that's the first step, I think, is to get the church to accept Bitcoin. And Jim, I know you guys can help with that, right? In Magnalia, and how would we go about that? I sit down and have a lunch with Pastor Justin. We have a conversation. If he says, well, maybe that sounds interesting that we could accept Bitcoin and not, be forced not to sell it for 10 years or whatever. How would we go about utilizing you and anyone else watching this stream that want to orange pill their church? How can they utilize your help, Jim, and Magnalia?
Sure. There's a couple of points I want to make about that, and then I can answer the question directly. The first thing is a lot of Bitcoiners, especially if they go to a church like you that has a significant balance in their treasury, sort of want to go whole hog right away and be like, convert all of it to Bitcoin right away and self-custody and do the whole thing. And the reality is that very few churches are going to be able to just jump straight to the end state. And so the second point is you have to really figure out, are you talking to the right person in your church? So there's the obvious people, like there's the treasurer, or there's the deacon, or there's even the pastor. And these are the high profile people that you may think will be your ally, but they may be using their relationship capital in the organization in other areas. Like they're trying to push initiatives to get certain mission projects going or whatever, and they can only do so much, right? And so a lot of times there may be somebody in the church that isn't even part of the official leadership that has a lot of sway and influence, right, in the church. And so, or even just your own, like, who are your friendships with, and who do you have rapport with already, right? And maybe they can help you get to the right place. So a lot of Bitcoiners will just sort of look at the bulletin and figure out who the treasurer is, and then just like go and beat the guy up in some conversation. If he's not ready to just like dump all of his fiat for Bitcoin and put it all in a cold storage wallet, then they just rage quit the meeting. It's like not going to be super productive. Okay. So having said that, like you said, Anders, what's going to be more likely is they're going to start a journey of like studying and learning. And that's where it depends on who you're talking to. Some people want 5-minute YouTube videos. Other people are willing to read a book that takes 20 hours. Other people want to have conversations. They want to be face to face with you and like be able to ask you questions and stuff like that. You may not be, I'm not saying you, Anders, or you, Linus, but like just whoever you are, Bitcoiner watching us, you may not feel comfortable being that person. And so if you need a resource like me or Tim to talk to that person for you, that's where we're happy to just hop on a phone call and be that resource. Or we put out videos that you can send to them that are from a Christian, like an Orthodox Christian viewpoint, from guys that are in a respected denomination, have credentials, and we're ordained. We're not just some random crackpot on the internet kind of thing.
Great.
Or, we put together like a whole resource packet of, hey, here's all the best articles and books and all these things. We have a link on our website. We can also post it in the show notes here. We've meticulously gone through, and I say I'm probably, I've OD'd probably a little bit more than Tim on some of this stuff, but have spent like thousands of hours combing through all of this stuff, whether it's articles or books or podcasts or YouTube videos or whatever, and curated like the top 1% of the top 1% of all of that and categorized it by, hey, here's beginner level stuff, intermediate stuff, advanced stuff. Here's stuff that are people that are more interested in like the human rights side of things versus people that are more interested in like economics, or people that are more interested in like technical stuff. If you're like a software developer like me. And so like, especially from an objection standpoint, I put out a series of like videos that just cover all the common objections kind of baked into 4 different categories, depending on where you're coming from. So we have those resources. If you can't figure out what are the right resources to give to the person you're talking to, we're happy to help you talk to that person, figure out where they are in their journey and give them the right resources. And then once they kind of get over the hump, then the next question is going to be, okay, where are they willing to start? Like, are they willing to accept Bitcoin, but they're going to require you to sell it first? Then you may want to set up like a donor advised fund, so that way you can still give tax advantage in a tax advantaged way. So this is the idea of like taking your Bitcoin, putting it in a fund at like Fidelity. they liquidate it for dollars, and then they give it to your church after they do the liquidation, and you don't pay taxes on that sale. You still get to write it off at the full market value, and your church just gets dollars, and they don't have to touch Bitcoin. Like the next step would be maybe your church sets up a River account, and we have contacts at River that will hold their hand, like white glove service. Go ahead.
No, yeah, I just want to say perfect, because there's something else I want to talk to you about, and you, Linus, and it's River that I have in mind, because it is Christian founded and led, and I like the. So yeah, that was me just thinking and pointing, but please carry on.
We love the guy.
Yes,
the guys and gals over at River are great. We actually met most of them in person and at Vegas. Super nice, down to earth. We have their multiple team members' contact info depending on who you are, and they're totally happy to white glove onboard churches for us. And so we've been working with a couple churches already to help them through that process. But the idea is it's a full reserve. They publish their reserves exchange, and it's Bitcoin only. Okay. So I think, again, a lot of like hardcore maxis will say, not your keys, not your coins. Well, the reality is that when you're dealing with like your no coiner church friends, they're not going to be in there stamping their seeds. And we may get to that, but it's just like, okay, they just want to have like their River account that's just like their checking account or their Schwab account, and they can call somebody that will reset their password. And okay, so you get the River account set up, and then you just like donate to them on their River account. Okay. And it's probably just going to be like small amounts at a time, because they're not going to put all their treasury at the beginning. And so obviously at some point over many months or years, and with Bitcoin going to the moon, that balance will get to a point where then it justifies them going to the next step, which is taking self-custody or something, something like that. But it, again, especially with like a full reserve exchange like River, I don't think we're betraying the ideals of the Bitcoin maximalist by recommending that our church do that. It's like, what's the alternative? The alternative is they're holding cuck bucks at Wells Fargo, right? And so it's like cuck bucks at Wells Fargo, BTC on River. Obviously, BTC on River is better. Yeah. So get them to that level. And and sometimes, again, if your church is like in this scenario where it doesn't have enough operating capital, sometimes it might need to be, hey, I'm willing to like give above and beyond my normal tithe if you guys are willing to set up a River account and receive it. And so there's kind of there's like a trade-off there, right? It's like you're willing to give more, and it wasn't stuff that was already budgeted, because if you've been going to your church for a while, part of your tithe is probably baked into their operating budget, right? So if you're giving above and beyond, then they can't really argue against that. Okay. So, but then the next, with that, there's probably going to need to be either a giving policy or an update to their giving policy. So churches typically have like a document that describes, okay, here's our giving policy, here's what we're willing to accept. A lot of times when churches accept things like property, they'll have rules about like, we're going to, like if your grandmother donates her Coca-Cola stock from 1947, it's literally stock certificates. They're gonna liquidate the Coca-Cola stock and put it into Wells Fargo. So typically what they'll do is they'll treat Bitcoin like stock, and they'll just say, well, any real property, we're just going to liquidate. Yep. So it's not the end of the world. You still, even if that's what they want to stick with, you can still get them to get a River account, donate the Bitcoin to the River account, then they can liquidate it, and you can still do it in a tax advantage way. So the advantage being you don't have to set up the donor advised fund. And then from there, you work with them on saying, okay, well, would you be willing to consider holding some or all of it for a certain period of time? And you get them across that hump. And then once you kind of get them across that hump, then it's like, okay, would you be willing over time to start converting some or all of your treasury into Bitcoin? You do it step by step, right? And then kind of the final boss is self-custody, which, unless you've got kind of an Uncle Jim like me, in the church, and maybe you guys could be the Uncle Jim for your churches, but the reality is like very few churches are going to have like an Uncle Jim that's willing to kind of help them on custody. And even if you do, like, let's say you have 7 elders or something, and so you're going to set up like a 4 of 7 multi-sig. You still end up with these hard questions of, well, where are we going to store these devices and these seed plates? And so we don't have the answer on that one, but I think that, again, we're so early that it's like, we're talking like 5 or 10 years from now, it could just be totally standard that like every single bank just allows you to deposit Bitcoin into the bank, and they have like full reserve, like they publish their addresses. And for the vast majority of people, that's what Bitcoin's going to be. Like I can't remember who I was talking about. I think it was Luke Broyles. I haven't published it. We had a podcast.
He's a friend of mine.
Luke, he's great. We did a podcast episode in Vegas, and my question to him was, he had made some tweet that was something to the extent of like, UTXOs are the new land rush essentially, and most people are just going to be tenants paying rent. And so, in that analogy, if you're a tenant paying rent to a UTXO, it's like you have paper Bitcoin because you just have it deposited on an exchange somewhere. Well, the reality is that in the far future of Bitcoin, and this may be after we're all long gone, dead, and celebrating in heaven, it's going to be our kids' problem to figure out. People aren't going to be doing base layer transactions. Like to move money around the base layer, it's going to be like $100,000, to just do like one transaction. And so that's just the reality is, and I know this might like some hardcore Bitcoin maxis, like a little part of them inside dies when I say this, but like the reality is that the vast majority, I believe, like Bitcoin's probably going to last for thousands of years, right? So like we're here thousands of years. The vast majority of Bitcoin's time frame and the vast majority of people involved in Bitcoin are not going to have self-custody Bitcoin. It's just not going to happen. So, I think recommending that our churches just hold on River in their bank if they take it, like I think that's totally fine.
Yeah, I think, and Linus also, of course, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what Jim is saying. I think it's the most important for me, first off, is that my church and other churches and Christians in general get the benefit of not being stolen from on a daily basis when the money printer runs. Like if we can prevent the theft from you, that's a good start. Now, then later, that can be a good next step to get the churches to do self-custody. But I think if we can just get people to own Bitcoin and use that as part of their long-term savings and financial planning, I think that is a very important and great and necessary first step. And then that can be a natural next step to do self-custody. But then you got another situation with like, who's going to hold the keys, people being tempted, all of a sudden, maybe it's worth 20 million. Is someone going to disappear with the keys, et cetera? Are you going to do multi-sig, all of those things? It's a little bit more complicated. Like let's get churches on River and Christians on River or other Bitcoin services to start with.
Well, I think that's brilliant. I mean, like you were saying, Jim, they want to log in like they're logging into their bank account and see it there. So that's what I'm trying to figure out is that we're going to do at the end of this year, all of our year-end giving, big gift and big kind of, we'll see. But how do you talk to like how long are you asking a church or a ministry to hold on to it? How have you guys experienced with that? Because that's kind of the next conversation that I need to have with our giving, and I'm not sure really what to say.
Yeah. So my typical answer to that has been at least 4 years,
right?
Which seems like an eternity in the fiat matrix that we all live in. But in the context of like Christendom and the history of the church, 4 years is like a blip. I mean, we're talking about artisans that worked on like this much of a fresco in Notre Dame for their entire life and then died and then never even saw the finished product, So it's like, but having said that, that was kind of based on 4-year cycle theory, which I don't know.
That's
do you guys think
disrupted now? But
do you think cycles are over? What do you think?
I think that's a great question, Jim. What I'll say is, first of all, Linus knows a lot more than he will admit to. That Linus is.
I think we're all embarrassed by how much we've studied this topic.
I probably do an hour and a half or 2 hours a day. Kids go down. I'm like reading,
Wait, what was your question again?
So is the 4-year cycle dead? That's the question.
Yeah. So what I'll say is, first of all, great question. What I'll say is, well, until now, it's intact. Until this day, the 4-year cycle is intact. It's in 21. I was part of the growing amount of Bitcoiners that said this time is different, and then it wasn't different. So, but maybe this time it is different, because I always also said, well, during my time as a Bitcoiner, that once the biggest nation in the world starts accumulating Bitcoin, that might actually mean we're not going to have 12 months of bear market anymore. And that's what Trump has at least initiated with the strategic Bitcoin reserve. It's there now. They're not buying it, but they're looking for ways to buy it budget neutral, which could be sell $1 trillion of gold and buy 4 million Bitcoin. That would be a start. So it remains to be seen. So far it's intact, but it'll be interesting to see how the year, which is just the next 6 months, plays out.
I think the safe bet. I think the safe bet is to assume 4-year cycles are still here, and so I think we have to say, like, you need to be able to hold this for at least 4 years, otherwise you might get wrecked.
I think that's probably better be on the safe side with that.
Yeah, for sure. So having said that, I think that there's different types of funds at churches. There's like the operating fund, there's the deacon fund, there's the building fund. So most of the time it's like the long-term missions or building fund that could actually feasibly hold it for 4 years. Now, if your church, like if your church is going to be building a building in 2 years, like they've already started doing the plans and they've bought the land or something like that, then maybe. But most building funds, churches hold for 5, 10, 15 years, right? There's these long-term funds. I wouldn't recommend giving Bitcoin to like the deacon or the service fund or like the operating fund. Those funds
you've chosen your words pretty carefully in your website as far as savings versus investing. I think I noticed.
Yeah, 100%. I don't think, again, it's like Anders said at the very beginning, we have to take this conversation back. This is not an investment. It's not, we're not speculating here.
Right.
Again, if you zoom in and you say our time horizon is 6 months, then yes, it's total speculation. But if you zoom out and it's like 4 or more years, I mean, obviously nobody knows the future, and Bitcoin quantum could hack Bitcoin, but it's like, at that point, the entire financial system crashes because it's all built on cryptography too. So it's just like, I don't know. To me, it's not. You're not really speculating when you zoom out past 4 years.
I agree. Yeah, I think it's really good.
Jim, is it possible now you mentioned River, is it possible to set some limitation there and say, but you're not allowed to sell any of the Bitcoin on this account until, say, 10 years later, for instance? Is that possible to set that as a limitation?
Yeah, so they don't, I think what you're talking about is time locks. So Bitcoin does support time locking. River doesn't support that in their UI. They introduced, I can't remember what the feature's called. It's like Vault or something, or Safe Vault, where even if the account owner wants to withdraw, there's like a 48-hour hold and notification emails will go out. And so I did ask them this question actually, because this comes up all the time. There's this idea of wanting to require multiple signers to be able to withdraw the Bitcoin, and they don't have that yet. They are working on it. In the meantime, I think they're saying enable the secure vault or whatever the feature's called, and then add like a email group as the notification email that goes out. So then like all your elders or whatever can be on that notification. So if for whatever reason the pastor or one of the elders was like trying to do something not totally above board, you would have 48 hours. You'd get the notification. You could call them, and then they could make sure it didn't happen.
Right.
Right. So maybe it can be manually created. I just want to have an agreement with my church that they don't sell it for 10 years because it's too meaningless right now anyway. But I know 10 years from now it would make a difference.
Typically that's handled in the giving policy. So the giving policy will say something like, if you donate Bitcoin, the default position is we're going to liquidate it for cash unless the donor says otherwise. And then, if the donor wants us to hold it, then on a case-by-case basis, we will work with the donor to establish the terms of that gift, essentially. Right. So, obviously, it'd be better to have a giving policy that was like, hey, if you donate Bitcoin, we're just going to hold it by default for 4 years. And maybe we can get some churches to get there. But I think, again, we're taking baby steps.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Jim, would you like me to pull up the website? Is there anything you'd like to go through there? We could just show.
Yeah, you can pull up the website if you want.
Let me see. Where do I?
It's Magnalia.foundation.
This was okay. I just want to share. Yeah. So, no. See, that's not it. I need to share the other stop screen sharing. I need to share the right. There we go. The right tab.
Yep.
There we go.
This is us. So this is kind of an overview. Most of our content right now is on YouTube first, and then we do publish to Spotify and Apple Podcasts. This just kind of gives an overview of who Tim is, who I am, links to our Twitters or X, whatever. You can reach out to us there in the contact form. We get those emails directly, so it's not a black hole. You can, of course, make a donation in fiat if you want to. We'll accept other cryptos. If you send us anything besides Bitcoin, we'll definitely liquidate it for Bitcoin. If you, click on. Go ahead.
No. So wait, where was I? Oh, I clicked on the resources.
That's a great
Yeah, click on
that. Opens in a new tab. So let me just. I have to just quickly stop screen sharing, and then I go to that tab.
I've used this page so much. It's Jimmy did a great job. A really great job collecting all this information.
Yeah, so this is the culmination of like many years of effort of reading and digesting all this stuff.
So what do people like? So real quick, for those listening, if you go to the Magnalia .foundation website, which is about helping churches to understand Bitcoin and start using Bitcoin, if in the top menu you click on resources, you get to this page here, and you have some different resources here. Jim is level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. I see articles, books, videos. Yeah. Can you give us like a bit of an overview?
This is just a Google sheet for now. We're planning on turning this into like a more fleshed out just web page on our actual website, but this works good enough for now. So there's tabs across the bottom. The default tab that you're on, it's hidden under your name. I can't remember the name of that tab.
Okay, yeah, this is called Getting Started. Then there's
go back to the Getting Started one. So this is just, hey, what level are you at? Like, are you total beginner, level 1, or do you know a few things about Bitcoin, but you want to go to the next level 2? Are you Michael Saylor, level 4? And it has links to different types of content within each level. So that way, if you're like, oh, I like videos or articles or books or whatever, you can just like zero in on the content that interests you. So this is sort of just like the best of the best pulled out of the index tab, which is the last tab on the bottom. The index tab. This literally just has everything broken down by the type. And so like if you're looking for like 2,000 hours of studying, you could literally just go through everything on the index tab here. So yeah, but go back to the objections tab. So the second tab is objections. So what I did here is the 4 videos. So I did a series that's how to orange pill your church, which is essentially for Bitcoiners. And then I took all the content in that series and sort of redid it from the perspective of a no coiner at church talking to a Bitcoiner, and it's called Your Church and Bitcoin. So it's kind of the same topic looking at from 2 directions. In the How to Orange Pill Your Church series, there's 4 videos in the middle of it. It's like a 13 video series that are parts 1 through 4 that handle the objections. And so this page that Anders has pulled up has each specific objection in whatever those 4 categories were. So like technology, government, and politics, and then it shows in the videos, I reference like the source material for how to handle that objection, like, Broken Money from Lynn Alden or Gradually Then Suddenly from Parker Lewis. So it like has the objection, it has the source material, and then it tells you exactly where in that source material to go, like which chapters to go and find more details on handling that objection. And then the video is literally just kind of, each part I think was 15 to 20 minutes. I was trying to get them to be as short as possible, but like there's just so much to cover. Like getting it shorter than 50 minutes is pretty hard for each category. So I think I wouldn't recommend sending these videos to anybody directly that's like a no coiner, because it's probably going to just put a bunch of objections in their mind that they didn't even realize were objections.
Right.
Yeah. This is more like, hey, if you got into a conversation with somebody at your church and you heard this one thing and you didn't know how to answer it, then go to here, find that book or that article or whatever. Use my video as a starting point, as like the summary of how to respond to that objection. And if the summary isn't good enough for them, then go to that book, read that chapter. It'll give you more details, and then you can go have a follow-up conversation with whoever it is.
Great job.
Nice.
Yeah.
Love to see all those resources to both articles, books, and videos. That's really awesome.
Could you pull up? Go back to this sheet one more time. There's one more tab in there called products and services.
Yep, I'll go to product and services. Third tab.
So this is just obviously depending on what you're looking for. There's like exchanges, there's hardware you can buy, there's software you can use. So this is like a running list that we update all the time of the hardware and software and services that we can feel good about recommending. These aren't affiliate links. We don't make any money off of this. Like they don't pay us anything. These are the things that either we use or people we know use and have had good experiences. Like River, for example, we were talking about, they have full proof of reserves. So,
right.
And then one other thing, can you go to our YouTube channel, go back to the web or the Magnalia.Foundation website, and then just click see all videos?
Yeah. So for doing that, I just need to stop this screen share and then share the website.
It looks like Jason in the chat. Jason in the chat has just joined. He said he was asking where we could get to the resources. It's right here, Jason. If you just click on resources at the top of our webpage. Yeah.
I think you answered that question perfectly.
Cool. But click see all videos.
Yep. I'm clicking right here. See all videos. Boom.
Probably opened in a new tab again. Sorry. I have to go share that one.
Oh, okay. Yep. So, okay. Gotcha. We'll stop this tab and we'll share the new tab. There we go.
So you're going to land on a tab here that just literally shows all of our videos. But if you click on playlists at the top, we've organized these by categories. So like, for example, the 2 series I was talking about were how to orange pill your church and your church and Bitcoin. So 2 sides of the same coin, depending on if you're a Bitcoiner or a no coiner. And then Tim has his own series. We've got his Bitcoin and theology series there. That's going to be more like on theologically focused, where he's addressing kind of, my series are kind of more on the practical side of things, and his are more on the bringing the Bible to bear against some of these topics. So if you've got somebody that is interested in that stuff, steer them in that direction. And then we've got actually 2 more series coming out that we haven't even announced yet on Bitcoin and Sin that we're filming with Tim, which are going to be great. So you should definitely subscribe to us. But the third category here is the Christian Bitcoin podcast, which you can click there. This is where it's right in the middle. And you can get.
Yep.
Oh yeah, it's going to play it.
Start
Today. You get this on.
Yep. There we go.
Yeah, you can get this on Apple Podcasts and Spotify as well if you don't want to watch it on YouTube. But this is where we actually have guests come in. And I would love to have you two actually come on the podcast in the studio. We like to do it in person if you can. But we have guests come on, and we try to good.
So,
we try to have like a good blend of younger people, boomers, no coiners, Bitcoiners, and we've had some pretty big names on actually already. Like you can see Pierre Richard there at the top. We had him on a couple weeks ago, so he's a nice Christian Catholic dude. So,
I didn't even know he was a Christian. I met him a couple of times. Actually had him on Toxic Happy Hour in I think January 21 or something on this YouTube channel that we're watching right now.
He's great.
He's great. He's phenomenal, Pierre.
Yeah, he said in that podcast, one of his lines was "Jesus knows your private keys." So we use that for the title. It's great.
That's really good.
That is good. Anything else you want to show on the YouTube channel, or?
That's pretty much it. One other thing, we do a weekly podcast in collaboration with Thank God for Bitcoin, which is hosted by Jordan on their channel, the Thank God for Bitcoin channel. So you should definitely go subscribe to them if you haven't. And that podcast is a little bit of a different format. It's the 4 primary guys, at least for the episodes that we do, are me and Tim, and then Oshua and Jordan. And what we do is we collect all the tweets that we've been hearting over the last week. And then we kind of just go through kind of like a current affairs kind of and give our take. Like we want to give sort of the Orthodox Christian take on really cool. What's happening in the latest news in the Bitcoin world. Cause it's kind of like an all-in podcast, but more like from an Orthodox Christian standpoint.
Love it.
Really cool.
Yeah.
Great resources.
Definitely need to check that out. Yeah. So I should already be subscribed to Thank God for Bitcoin, but I'll have to double check.
Those episodes, we do those live on Tuesdays and Thursdays in the afternoon.
Nice.
Really cool, Jim.
I'm glad it's the afternoon because I got a new show going on. I call Meta Planet Roundtable, which is 9 a.m. every Tuesday PST. We spoke a little bit about it in the green room before going live, and that's why I always itch just like, let's just go live, because when guests come on and you have a little chit chat before, it's actually usually like really good conversation that you want to share with the audience. But yeah, Metaplanet and strategy and so on. How does that fit into the? How do you see that fitting into the scripture and?
He's got thoughts here. I want to hear what they are.
So, I mean, full disclosure, I own both Metaplanet and Strategy. There is a part of me that feels a little bit like Degen for doing that. Like going back to my altcoin days in the 2017 timeframe. But, on the other hand, it's like they have a corporate finance and debt structure that I, as an individual, don't have access to. And so there's part of me that feels like I get a lot more leverage ushering in the Bitcoin future if I put money into them and they can sop up a bunch more Bitcoin than I could directly. Now, having said that, the vast majority of my stack is self-custody BTC. So if you're buying Metaplanet and Strategy and you don't have any self-custody BTC, then I'd say, okay, pump the brakes, get your house in order first, and then we can start talking about those.
One of my good friends was like, just the other day, was like, should I be buying Metaplanet and MicroStrategy? But he's just just started stacking. I said, no, just focus on Bitcoin, dude. Just stack. Don't worry about that other stuff for a while.
Yeah, I mean, because the reality is that, you know, they'll probably outperform Bitcoin in a bull market, but then they're going to, you know, if the cycle's not dead and there's a pullback and Bitcoin goes down 50%, they're going to go down 80% or something, you know.
I told them just get to a whole coin. That's your mission. So
that's
you know, it's funny. That's like the British HODL and everybody are saying that. I think pretty soon it's going to be like, just get to a tenth of a coin, you know, and then pretty soon nobody's going to be talking about Bitcoins anymore. It's just all about sats.
Yeah. Right.
Look, if you can be a sats millionaire, you're set. Like 20 years from now, if you're a sats millionaire, and since there's, for those who don't know, there's 100 million sats on one Bitcoin, which means that a million sats is 1% of a Bitcoin, which now can be bought for $1,060. I believe 20 years from now, that's going to make a giant difference for your family.
I wrote really quick small story, but this is how I know we're so early, because I bought that like Satoshi shirt that's like Nirvana, you know, like with a smiley face. And so my kids play baseball, and they're 10 and 8, like little league, and there's like hundreds of people at the games and stuff. So I put this shirt on. It was like an experiment. I just wanted to see, like, would anybody notice? And only one person out of hundreds was like, dude, like your shirt, like, all right. And so, but I'm like, no. It was like,
did they like it because they thought it was Nirvana?
No, he knew. He's like,
okay.
Am I too late? And I'm like, no. He's like, really? I'm not too late. So I said, no, you're not too late at all. I'm like, it's a great time. So, but it's just, we are really early because nobody knows, like, you know, from my experiment at least.
And honestly, like, I started a Bitcoin meetup in Los Angeles in 2017, and the wild thing is, I don't feel we're that much further. It's 8 years in Bitcoin is a long time, but I don't feel that the amount of people that are still like anti and believe that, you know, the negative propaganda and like, no, it's too volatile and all these things. Just, there was a lot in 2017. There's a lot now. I don't feel that we've changed. It takes time.
Yeah. Well, you know what the difference is all the normies that you're talking about are still out there and don't believe in it. It's the family offices and all the people that have their assets managed by BlackRock that are now actually getting into it, and they're front running all the normies.
Yeah. Larry Fink jumped on that one, man, quick. But what do you think? The thing I encounter so much is that people think they're too late because it's not at, you know, 25 or 15. So,
dude,
like, what do you?
Everybody thinks they're too late. Literally everybody. I mean, I'm telling you. Like I said, when I looked at Bitcoin in 2011, guess what? It was trading at $20, and I thought I was too late because, you know, 6 months before that, it was trading at 20 cents. So I was like, I already missed it.
Yeah. One of my best friends, he told me he was looking at it at work and it was at $6. And then like a couple weeks later, it was at 16. He's like, I missed it.
Missed it. You missed it.
So.
Oh yeah, it's funny, Jim. My story is similar to yours. Well, minus the shitcoining. I will say I'll proudly say it's shitcoin. But I came across Bitcoin in 2011, and when I heard about I was reading this newspaper article, and when I came to the part where it explained there's miners, I thought, oh, it's like you know, the computer games like Farmville, where you have like farmers, you have miners, and this kind of thing, right? So I thought, oh, it's just a computer game thing, like money. It's not actual real money. But the thing is, it's the closest we've ever been to real money. And by the way, on that note, if you look up money in the dictionary, it says that money can store value through time, you know, for retirement, etc. And the dollar straight up is not fitting the description of money because it cannot store value. And that's why, that's why Christians and churches and everyone should be thinking about Bitcoin for saving in not the dollar. There's no saving in the dollar.
So I'll kind of, it sounds like we're probably coming to a close here, but one thing that I've been rolling around in my head is this idea of like a future Bitcoin patrons network. And the idea is is if Bitcoiners, if Bitcoin goes to the moon like we all think it's going to, there's going to be sort of like a vast amount of wealth being transferred into the pockets of Bitcoiners, which is firstly why we need to make sure that as many Bitcoiners as possible are Christians. And then secondly, if they are Christians, we need to make sure that they're discipled and trained and have a proper theology and a view towards wealth and a generosity, and really create a network of men and women, but it's probably going to be a lot of men is the reality. I mean, that's who a lot of Bitcoiners are, right? And we lead our families and we lead the church. We need to push each other and hold each other accountable to using this wealth for God's kingdom for multiple generations. And I think that the patron model is something that's interesting to kind of go back to and look at. It was something that was very common like just a couple hundred years ago, and now it's completely out of fashion. It's all about, these days it's all about just like writing checks to Compassion International or whoever your favorite mission organization is, which there's nothing wrong with that. We've given money to Compassion International, but I think there's just a much richer experience being in the nitty gritty of the mission work and the kingdom work yourself, and sort of trying to find those people in the kingdom that need the funding and coming alongside them and helping them with the funding and helping them with the work at the same time.
Yeah. I also just put on here in the software or whatever on Restream, learn more. So if people are interested in learning more about the Magnalia Foundation that Jim and Tim they run, you can go to magnalia.foundation, where also, even if this is not your jam, but you're just interested in great Bitcoin content, at the very top, as we covered, there's a button or a link to resources where there's lots of great videos, books, and article.
We've taken all the work off your plate. We watched 10,000 videos and read 1 million books, and you're going to get the best 100 of them.
There you go. There you go.
And that is Magnalia. It's not Magnolia. So Magnalia, you have to spell it correctly. It's Latin for great things, is what it means.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Right.
So Tim's the bookworm nerd that came up with that. He's speaks Latin, of course.
Nice.
If you really want to know who the smartest guy in the room, he's not here, Linus. He's next door.
I just know him at the bottom of the totem pole.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I'm smart when it comes to knowing how to set up your computer or something, but yeah.
No, you guys have influenced me so much. You guys sent me that picture of you guys together at the Bitcoin conference, and I showed my wife. I'm like, this is a special picture to me, because like you guys influenced me and really changed a lot of my financial, completely course direction, different course. So I have that picture on my phone. I'm like, oh, this is special. So I really appreciate you.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, actually. So you should have come. We would have loved to have had you there. So next year, unfortunately, the conference is going to be in Vegas again, but just because you go to Vegas doesn't even necessarily mean you have to go to the conference. There's a bunch of other events going on outside, like the Thank God for Bitcoin barbecue. We actually did a barbecue for Magnalia. And so if you guys are planning to go to Vegas next year, reach out to us and let us know, and we can totally hook you up, and we can get in person. We'd love to meet everybody.
Yeah. Well, a little side note, but I'm really interested in what you're doing with educating on stewardship. I think that's that's a passion of mine. Like, we love to give.
I think what was interesting, the reason I brought that up is because you're doing the in-person events as well, right? And so I think there's going to have to be some component of it that's in person. And so I actually wanted to pick your brain about that, kind of maybe on the side.
Yeah.
Talk about what that might look like.
Yeah, I've been a part of our ministry for about 20 years, so we've learned how to go about that. But just it's hard for people to not just see money as pursuit of comfort and security, and control and to see it as a real tool for God's kingdom. So that's
for sure.
I'd love to see more people really have that heart for it, and not just just a transactionary type thing.
Yeah. Trollstein said he didn't hear about the barbecue. Apologies for that. We'll do better next time. We will be there in Vegas. We're planning on going to BitBlock Boom as well, which is going to be in April next year in Fort Worth in the Stockyards, actually. That's kind of my old stomping grounds. I grew up in Arlington, right across the lake from Fort Worth. So there's going to be multiple in-person opportunities that we already know about. And then, like I was just talking about with Linus, we want to put together maybe some in-persons either here in Utah or kind of in other central places. We live in a pretty special place, both in the summertime and the winter. It's kind of just a mountain paradise that you can get outside and hike and camp and ski and do all sorts of fun outdoor stuff. So, of course, as men, we like to be doing stuff while we're talking to each other. So, and that is another thing. I did mention I'm an avid skier. When I'm not skiing off cliffs, I like to teach people how to ski. So if that's something you're interested in.
Off cliffs?
Yeah, no, I won't.
Here's the cliff. You just go this way and then you go this way.
No, but if you're a Bitcoiner and a skier, I'm kind of putting together this idea of like a annual Bitcoiner ski scenario. So anyways, let me know if you're interested.
Nice. Yeah, I could be interested, Jim. And by the way, so Linus had told me about you several times, mentioning that I was part of two people that had orange pilled him. And when I was at Thank God for Bitcoin, the barbecue there, that Jordan Bush was hosting, then he was explaining about the Magnalia Foundation. I'm like, wait, this is what Linus told me about. This dude where they help churches understand Bitcoin and start using Bitcoin to save in. And then he explained about there's Tim, and then there's you, and like you're an entrepreneur. Like, that's the guy. I got to go up and talk to Jim. That's my friend's friend. So
that's why these in-person events are great, because you just you get all these connections, and it's
absolutely
we'll be friends for life.
And then hopefully also after that, Jim,
eternity
also up there for eternity. Yeah, really I can recommend Thank God for Bitcoin. I think they sell their tickets through Eventbrite. I recommend going to Thank God for Bitcoin. That was a really good side event, like a mini conference. There was different speakers. There was what's it called? Joshua, he has that Brilliant Lab.
Yeah, Joshua Hawthorne runs Brilliance Labs, which is kind of the missions version of our organization. So they're a nonprofit that's focused on Bitcoin for missions. We're a nonprofit that's focused on Bitcoin for churches.
Right.
Cool.
But that was super awesome, because I met a lot of good Christian Bitcoiners and including you, Jim. But so as Trollstein said, he didn't know about your barbecue, and neither did I. Where will people know about it? For where should we follow or keep our eyes?
So
know about it next year.
Next year, so you should definitely follow Magnalia on X. It's Magnalia FDN. There's a link on our website to that. And then also, if you're old school, you can just sign up for our mailing list. It's right on our website as well. And we'll make sure to send out email actually next time. This was kind of this year, we weren't really sure how much interest there was going to be. And so we just kind of just did a word of mouth kind of invite only thing. And it kind of got bigger than we thought it would. So next year, I'm going to try to be a little bit more prepared and have a little bit more food. We didn't actually run out of brisket, but so I smoked 2 briskets and 2 beef ribs here. We live outside of Park City in Utah, and then we drove to Vegas. It's like a 6-hour drive or whatever. So I had the briskets in the cooler in the back of the truck, in my Cybertruck. It's an orange Cybertruck. We drove down to the Airbnb. Nice. And then I pulled them out of the cooler. We started slicing at like 7 o'clock at night. I pulled them off the grill at like 8 in the morning, and the meat was still like 145 degrees. So it was great.
Wow. That's great.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I'm gonna be there next year. I already bought my my ticket because they announced it like the last day of the conference. If you went and bought the package, I think through Jam Pack or something, where I already booked the hotel. And I personally recommend staying at the ones where the conference is as well. It's just so convenient that you can just go back to your own room anytime you want. You don't need to go outside in the heat. And it's closer. And then I got a free general admission ticket because that was the offer when you're doing it early. So I'll be there next year. Looking forward to see you, Jim, and I hope you'll be there as well, Linus. Well, guys,
you could just drive up from LA.
I can, yeah.
You could make it a road trip, Linus.
Isn't it like a shorter drive from LA than from where I am?
Vegas?
Yeah,
I think it's like 4.5 hours.
Yeah. You have no excuse.
Yeah. No, it's not.
And okay, so let's bring it full circle. So in the green room before we got going, we were talking about our Bitcoin wives. So I'm not saying you shouldn't stay at the Venetian or whatever. It's definitely convenient to stay at the Venetian. But if you do have a Bitcoin wife, the wives kind of don't necessarily like that, and they like to have like an Airbnb or whatever. So we had several couples at our Airbnb with the Bitcoin wives, and so Danny should totally come. It would be fun. We bring the wives.
We with a 3-year, we have a 3-year-old too, and there's no way we do hotels. It's just like
or even Bitcoin kids. You don't have to go to the Strip. You just stay like in the suburbs or whatever, and so it's basically just like LA. You can see Sodom and Gomorrah in the distance.
Yeah, my poor wife, she's got to hear me talk about all the things I'm excited about and learning about. She just goes, yeah, great. I mean, she's actually interested, but there's only so much she can kind of consume.
Yeah. Well, my poor wife is like, when can we buy a house again? And I'm like,
oh, I know.
That would require me to sell a bunch of Bitcoin.
Yeah, no. I just love to save money. If I could put it in there.
Yeah, I'm like, maybe when there's no monetary premium in real estate anymore, hopefully that'll happen sometime soon.
It definitely makes you really watch spending. I mean, that's for sure. For us, it did. When we journey, we're like, well, every little bit we want to put in there.
That's a double-edged sword, though, because it can turn into an idol very quickly, and you never end up living your life at all. So,
that's a good point. Yep.
Yeah, but it definitely, I guess, Bitcoin teaches us like understanding that we have money that actually go up in value instead of losing value, which actually is part of what makes it money. Dollar doesn't even qualify for being money. You kind of really just learn to delay gratification, and that's the funny thing, because most Bitcoiners talk about it's delayed gratification, and what I'm trying to remind people of, yes, it's delayed gratification. It's not never gratification. This is so that one day in the future you can benefit, or someone can benefit. And as Christians, we only stewards of God's money. None of it is ours. Whatever we hold, it is God's, and we're just being stewards of it. And
a good way to fight idolatry is really through generosity and giving. I think that's one of the best ways to do it. So
I think it's good for the kids too. I started offering my kids to pay them their allowance in dirty fiat or Bitcoin, or they can choose some percentage. The key point, though, is that if you take Bitcoin, you don't get it till you're 18.
It's so funny. I've done the same thing, because they have spend, give, and save, and so the save is all goes into their Bitcoin accounts on River, and then their spend, they like to go buy like baseball cards and stuff, and then the give, the next step is to give through River, which we do. So that's pretty cool.
I think that's so awesome that you're teaching your kids already, like as they're receiving their allowance, for some of that to be given to a cause that they're working. That's what's
cool is when they give, they usually get a letter from whoever they give to, thanking them personally, and it's like really cool to see them go, whoa, like I gave. It's like $10, but if I could teach my kids to be givers at a young age, then they won't go through life gripping money stuff and things like this. And I just seen that becomes so hard for so many men when they just grip, and it's all about comfort, control, and security. So if I could do one thing for my kids in this area, it's to teach them to live with an open hand, where God can freely put in and God can take away. When they learn it, they can learn to have faith and walk with God, and not it be all about, gripping it too tight. So yeah, starting them giving early is huge. So
I think we probably need to do a follow-up episode on sort of the multi-generational patron stuff, because there's kind of a balance. I think as Christians, we need to address people's needs and concerns that are right in front of us right now. We need to give, for sure. But then there's also this idea of gripping it for the kingdom. And so how do we look towards like funding the church and the kingdom for multiple generations? And when you start to view it that way, it's a lot easier to, we as Americans, this whole individualism culture, it's like we view everything as our own, right? And when you start to view everything as God's, you see yourself as just like one little tiny link in a long chain, and you're just stewarding it for this short period of time, right? So it's trying to find the balance between like how much do you give away like right now versus how much do you try to fund the next generation.
It's great points. Yeah, love all that.
I'd love to do a follow-up, Jim. I'd love to have both of you back here again, because we're on the same mission here, and it's and you guys have such great input. So before I forget, I just want to mention that in 28 minutes at 4 p.m. PST, we spoke a little bit about leveraged Bitcoin equities, which companies like Strategy and MetaPlanet are. The GOAT within MetaPlanet, which is the fastest horse in the race right now. His name is, on X, he goes under the handle of @actually climber. So he's known as Climb That Ladder. His handle is @actually climber, and he has a live stream on X. So for those that are watching from X, I can see there's 495 people watching live right now on my X account. Then he is really the GOAT when it comes to understanding MetaPlanet, and has done so much deep dive. Linus, you know about him because we've spoken about him.
I've listened to a lot of his stuff, and it's really, incredible.
Yeah, I've seen him. The other guy I would say is Adam Livingston, has some incredible content on it as well.
I love reading his stuff because
dude, he's so
creative.
His analogies are just so. Yeah. Does he come up with all that, or is it like all AI generated? I don't know.
No, I think he's a real creative, brilliant. Like he just his analogies just blow me away. They're so fun.
Yeah.
And he's full of energy. Well, I can attest that Adam Livingston is a real person. I met him at the MetaPlanet meet and greet in Vegas. So Adam is real, and I'm glad that I'm on the same page with you two. That Climb and Adam are really up there. So surprise, on Tuesday 9 a.m. PST on this YouTube channel or this X account that I have is MetaPlanet Roundtable episode 2, which is with actual Climber and Adam.
Nice.
So that's going to be fire. And then Rye Quant, which is one of the original Quant bros, him and Punter Jeff started really LB content more than a year ago. I think it was February or March 24. Those three guys are goats, and they're gonna be on my YouTube channel X here on Tuesday 9 a.m. PST. Stop working, call in sick, whatever. You got to watch that. I'm joking.
I put that on during my workout. I just like pump iron while I'm watching stuff like that.
300 pounds.
Drink the creatine, pump weights, and watch the live stream.
Sweet.
I know also, like, we've gone over what time you guys had allocated, but I do want, Linus, can you not just spend like 1 or 2 minutes, because what you do has changed my life, and I am I'm following what you're offering with Adventures of the Heart, and we just had the alumni 10 sessions where sadly I missed the last one. Let's bring that up because I was in Vegas, and
I'll keep it real brief. But for the last probably 20 years, since I was in my mid-20s, I work with a ministry called Adventures of the Heart, and we do adventure type expeditions. Like you said, Jim, guys don't like to sit there and, just do nothing. So we combine adventure with kind of a retreat style session. It's really about the recovery of the heart of a man. I mean, in our culture, we've lost what it is to be a man and walk with God. And what does that look like? And I mean, so we really focus on the restoration of the masculine heart and the masculine heart coming alive to Jesus. And that affects a family, it affects a marriage. I mean, it's really cool to see the life change that happens. So that's what we do. We do these weekend adventure getaways and see 80% of the guys that come say it's, 3 of the most powerful days of their life, because they really get to learn to walk with God and recover their masculinity, which is pretty cool. It's needed in our culture. I mean, the culture's pounded men, and we need more good fathers, good husbands, good men that walk with God. So that's what we do.
And future patrons.
Yes, I love it. Cool.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I'm looking forward to the expedition end of August, Linus, which is up in, it's called Ohio.
Ohio, near Ventura.
Ohio.
Yep.
In Ventura. So it's a 1 hour drive north of LA, approximately. Really looking forward to that. But where can people find information about that? Do you have any spots?
A 1 hour drive whenever LA is not a war zone?
No, yeah, it just depends. That could be a 5-hour drive. Yeah. For the 405 is brutal. Just adventuresoftheheart.org, not .com. That's like some weird dating website. So it's adventuresoftheheart.org. So yeah, thanks, Anders.
Well, thank you guys both so much, both Linus and Jim, for being here and sharing and teaching. Jim, awesome to hear about Magnalia.
Thanks, Anders.
Foundation.
Thanks for having me on.
So I definitely let's do some follow up. I'm traveling to Europe this week, but I will do episodes from there. I'd love to do this again. Thank you everyone for what. We have 500 live viewers. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe if you like it, and share it with others that are trying to orange pill their church.